towards the west side of Killeen. So once you come from on Stan Suter past where the HEB is, just about everything going forward, all the way down to Watercrest up to Clear Creek, all of that's District 4. Essentially West Killeen. This is West Killeen. It's not South Killeen. It's not South Central Killeen. It's West Killeen. So this is District 4. So give you a little perspective or insight on how we got here. I want to go ahead and do that because that's very important. Assumptions sometimes that the city just wants to put something here, the council doesn't care. I'm going to go through the cycle of how we got here. I actually had to make some notes so I can make sure everything is clear. And I know we got the press here, so I want to make sure I'm always on point. Very good. All right, so first of all, the city of Killeen, if you don't know, is engaged in a comprehensive plan. That plan was started in 2021, and what it's going to do is give council and the city direction going forward for the next 25 to 30 years, as far as where to put things, land use, how to do economic development, all those good things. The city spent over $350,000 for that project, and it's closing up this year. A lot of citizen input went into it over time, but it's a pretty big deal. In those presentations, the consultant talked about or recognized that we have a lack of diversity of housing in the city of Killeen. Once that was understood, the proposal from staff was we need to introduce diverse housing across the city of Killeen. Hence, the proposal for townhomes on this side of Killeen, in this district, right here, this very location. So that proposal came up, that came to the council for consideration. City council does not make the agenda items. The agenda items come down from the city manager, and we vote and study these subjects, talk to residents, and then vote. This came up for vote. Go back, make sure I'm just clear here. So on October 20th, the city sent out a courtesy notification. Everyone who lives within 400 feet of this site and 200 feet of this site got a letter that looked like this. Commonly in our city, people see something like this, it gets tossed, they see the envelope, don't mean nothing. This is critical to pay attention to city mail that comes to your address because it's communicating what is coming down the line. So this wonderful notice came down. This is called a notification notice, courtesy notification. It discusses on one side a zoning request from the applicant and a flume request, amendment on the other side of it. So it's two parts of this. The applicant wants to rezone the property to where it can have townhomes, and then they also want to change the future land use map to say, hey, look, this is where we're going to have diversity in housing, essentially. This came to council, this letter came out to everyone here on October 20th, those particular residents. The letter stated that on November 1st, there will be a Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for the residents to come out and speak to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Who all is familiar with the Planning and Zoning Commission? Okay, of course you are, right? So the Planning and Zoning Commission is basically a subcommittee below council that takes recommendations, looks at plats, looks at what developments want to be, and they ask questions based on it. And they make the decision whether or not they want to push that to council for us to finally vote on. The Planning and Zoning Commission met on this on November 1st, and they had a discussion, and no one, unfortunately, from the subdivision was there to speak in favor or in opposition, leaving the Planning and Zoning to make that final decision without your input. The vote, from what I understand, was 6 to 1 or 6 to 0, but the majority was there and it came to council. Once it gets to council, we review it, we have the last say, we have that last vote. Unfortunately, no one was there to speak on that day. In the letter as well, it talks about where residents have the opportunity to protest or do a petition, such as what's happening here. The deadline for that was on December 7th. They didn't receive that because no one was aware, no one was speaking about the opposition. So once Planning and Zoning pushed it to the council, it came to the council for a workshop. This is how the council meeting went. We got to this item, and I'm your representative for District 4, and I had questions from the applicant. I said, what are these townhomes going to look like? Do we have another way to get in and out? Do we know what the design standards are? Do we know what landscape is going to look like? I mentioned the lighting. I asked about the height of the buildings because they may be 20, 30 feet because they're townhomes. The applicant didn't have adequate answers at that moment. So I said, something's not right about this. Let me go out to the site. Later in the week, I came out here. I parked over there and I walked this site. As soon as I seen how open this was, it was red flags for me, because it's obvious that you have a large development right here in this corner. It'd be obvious to those living in this area right here. Wasn't comfortable with that. Needless to say, I didn't have the information that I wanted from the applicant at that time. Still, no one at that workshop, because you have the opportunity to come to the city council workshop and speak on these items. No one spoke in favor or opposition. The next week we go to vote, okay? No one came to speak for or in opposition. As a councilman, as your advocate, I determined to table the item, make a motion to table the item, which means put it off for a certain amount of time so that I can come back out here and speak to you guys about this and get your opinion on the project. Commonly, when these things come to council, after it's gone to planning and zoning, the opportunity for petition has happened, it's come to workshop, and no one's spoken on it. A lot of times, council's just ready to vote. In other words, folks that have had the opportunity, let's vote. I advocated so hard that unanimously, they said, hey, we're gonna let Councilman Boyd get out there and speak to his residents. We're gonna bring it back to talk about. I made the recommendation to bring it back for us to discuss in the middle of January. That date is November 18th. There will be a workshop, okay? The workshop's gonna give you the opportunity to come speak during citizens' comment at the beginning of the meeting.
What? Say that date again.
January 18th.
January 18th. It's a Tuesday. All council meetings on Tuesday. Let me back up a little bit. Are you guys tracking everything I'm saying so far?
Yes.
Yeah, I have a question about the initial notice that was sent out. Is
Sure.
there not some legal obligation that they need to send that out 30 days prior to this? So we have an opportunity? I got one in the mail,
Sure.
2 days prior to.
Sure.
I'm sorry, I can't just stop my life to go downtown to a city council meeting
Okay.
because I know just like everybody else, City Clean's trying to make money. And really, I'm not saying you, but those sitting in them seats want the money to generate for the city of Killeen. They don't care what's going where, as long as money is being generated for Killeen. So 2 days notice, and there was never a sign put out here? Is
So-
that legal?
So what the city has done as far as notification is legal. That's the process that's put in place. The city's not required to put signs out. The city's not required to wave flags. The city's not required to use Facebook. They're following state code and what the ordinance says to send the notices out, giving you guys the opportunity to respond to the notices.
Jack, right?
That's just how
And
it is.
there's no time frame. What you're saying.
I believe the time frame is about,
Josh.
I know they sent it out on the 20th
They
of
typed it up on the
October.
20th, sir. I'm tracking what you're saying. The
Sure.
letter's the 20th, but when did they actually put it in the mail for it to get lost in the Killeen mail system?
I would honestly have to check.
I mean, that's another problem we have over here as
Yes,
well.
it is.
Yeah, and the mail is the issue,
Yeah.
right? But again, as council members being aware of this stuff is why I advocate so hard. We're doing this now, right? Yeah. So
January 18th at what time?
5 o'clock. And let me get back to the meetings, okay? So you guys know how the council meetings work. City Hall is located downtown, okay, off of College Street. It's an old square building, but we have a beautiful chambers inside. Every Tuesday, there's a city council meeting. It's gonna be either a regular meeting or a workshop, okay? The workshop is when we review all the information and we discuss it in depth as council members. We listen to the citizens give input on these things at the beginning of the meeting. The following meeting, we vote and briefly discuss everything from that workshop. And we also take into account citizens' comment. That second meeting, the actual regular meeting, that's where the votes happen. That's where it's said and it's done, right? So those meetings are at 5 o'clock on Tuesday, downtown at City Hall on College Street, okay? I'm gonna go back through this timeline and go ahead.
So when that letter came out originally, and I don't know if anybody else felt this way, but I read the notice.
Sure.
And from the notice, it made it sound like it was just having rezoning issues that they were going to discuss. I guess I didn't even realize that in the rezoning that it was they were going to build townhomes here. I mean, if they would have said something about it, I think we all would have probably responded.
Right. Inside of here, and it's briefly in parentheses, it mentions residential townhouse, excuse me, the mass. Single family district. right?
Right.
So it is briefly mentioned in here. No, they don't go into detail. This is the process that the city goes about communicating.
Okay.
I'm gonna finish this timeline so then I can get to all the questions. Okay, so like I said, unanimously, everyone decided we're gonna give them the opportunity to go speak to the residents. I was contacted for the first time on December 27th by Mr. Delgado. A month before we had that last meeting where we could have voted and all this is done. I mean, done, right? But again, advocated for your behalf. Mr. Delgado reaching out, let me know what the concerns are, mention the transient housing. I seen the petition, talk about not understanding architectural standards, fencing, lighting, traffic, congestion, density, all that was taken into account. I'm out here to make sure that you guys have what's important to you, okay? I don't sit on the council based on what do I think is the best thing. Council members will tell you, I advocate hard for this district. There's a lot that's going on that I'm working to get squared away here, including this. So, before I answer the question, I'm gonna go into this portion. When we go to vote on the 25th of January, because January 18th, which is a Tuesday, is the workshop. We'll discuss it. The next week on the 25th, we will vote on it. When we go to vote at that time, there's going to be a public hearing. It's going to give you the opportunity, every last one if you choose to, and hopefully you'll show up. A lot of people just don't show up when it comes down to it. That's why I'm so glad to see you guys out here. I believe you'll show up. You'll have an opportunity to speak to the council why you're in favor or opposition to the request. Council will have to take that into consideration, and right after everyone's done speaking, the vote's going to happen. And just like that, that's what it's going to be. Okay?
Question, sir.
Yes, sir.
On that speaking portion, is everybody supposed to speak, or can we actually delegate somebody to speak on behalf of the whole community?
It's everyone's right to speak if they decide to. It would be more efficient if one person represented. But it's everyone's right. I'm not one to try to limit. So yes, that's a great question. I will say this: if council votes in opposition to this, it says no, we don't want to rezone it, we don't want to do a flume case amendment, we want to leave it as is for now. The applicant does have the opportunity and the right, being the owner of the property, because people who own property have a right to develop it, but the city has standards for it, has to go through the process. That applicant can come back to say, hey, we're looking at building the same project as a planned unit development. What does that mean? That means they would be required to show you a concept plan, what landscaping is going to look like, parking, ingress, egress, address noise, traffic, all that would have to be addressed before they can start construction. We have no control over whether or not they're going to come back and say, hey, look, we're looking at doing a planned unit development. That may come, we'll do the same process. We'll come out here, we'll speak, and I'll make the decision based on what's important to you guys, okay? For the record, your council member is in opposition to this. I will be voting no, okay? That's already been communicated. That was understood indirectly in that meeting, okay? For a number of reasons. I didn't have questions that were answered, the show that we have here, and I just don't think the diversity of housing, which I mentioned in that meeting, is appropriate here. You can go back to the meetings on the city website, watch those 2 meetings, and you'll hear me. You'll see me speaking about this very request. Those videos are online for citizens to watch, our city council meetings, okay? So that is in place for you to see. And that's pretty much what I have. I'm ready to hear what some of your concerns are, to add those when I go speak and to take those into consideration as we move forward. Go ahead, sir.
All right. Ever since I met you, like almost 2 years ago, we've been talking about creating a park down here in this place. And I know this is like throwing a stone to the sky, but in reality, we feel like a neighborhood park will be appropriate for this neighborhood. Right now, we have over 400 houses, 400 families in this area, and this place is going to be developed, and then the one behind us is going to be developed. It's going to be almost like 600 families down here. We don't have a single green space down here because when they develop this unit, they then take the customer into considerations.
Right.
Do we have any possibility of having or pushing to actually get this place turned into a park, community park?
Thank you for the question. I briefly mentioned this. As we speak, there's an 80% possibility that there will be a neighborhood park close to this subdivision, if not in it. I have been working hard. I've been advocating. When I get an update on that, I will be reporting, sending a report to you guys on that. Go ahead.
I don't see nowhere, sir, because this is the only vacant space down here.
There's actually
From Estancia West all the way through for her, this is the only place that we have vacant right now.
the benefit of our community is that we have folks in our community that own land and property that want to see the city flourish and are able to donate sections of land for park space. And I believe that's something that we're going to start seeing happening. There are some things in the works from some of the meetings that I had that cannot be confirmed right now, which is why I'm telling you I've been advocating, and I believe that we're going to be successful in establishing a park here. Speaking on parks, for those who don't know, the city of Killeen has a total of 26 parks. Our district, which is the largest district, only has 2. Does anybody know the 2 parks are?
Aduma's one.
Aduma's one, and Maxdale Elementary. These parks are connected to existing elementary schools. Now, it's perceived that they belong to the elementary school, so they don't often get access. They're small, they don't get used. Most people are going to Lions Park, they're going to Long Branch Park. There's a need for parks here. There's a demand for parks here. When I ran on parks. I said it's going to be my responsibility, because I believe in getting things done, to get parks established in the city of Killeen. Ever since I got in office, I've been working on this initiative. We don't just need a small 3-acre park. We need an 8-acre park. We need a 30-acre park. We need about 6 or 7 parks in this district.
Yep.
So I'm working at that. Other thing I learned, it takes time, it takes money, it takes your tax dollars to make these things happen. So some of these things will get built out over time. My focus is establishing parks. If I can get that 30-acre plot of land over there dedicated to the city of Killeen, it's established over time. We'll make capital improvements and build it out, right? And so we need parks here. You made a good point. There's not a lot of spaces for parks out here. So getting a park is a big deal now, which is why I'm advocating for it, because building is continuing. As you see, you had a proposal when we first met when I was campaigning. You mentioned this very plot, and it was unfortunately that they determined they want to do residential development on it. But it doesn't mean there's not other opportunities for parks.
Why did they determine it not? Why they say we weren't able to build a park here?
You said, why did they?
Yeah.
No, the owners of the property, they want to build homes here. So I'm not sure if they even are considering a park, want to approach the city for a park. Because of the growth here, that's the focus. We just want to build houses, build duplexes, build apartments, because people are buying them, people are renting them. As council members, we have to step in, because in the past, the developers didn't have any ordinance to say, hey, you're required to reserve 4 acres of park space for every 400 houses. We're working on establishing something like that right now. And again, we can't make anybody build a certain thing in a certain place at this time. That's a violation of people's rights. But with all that said, there's also, in conjunction with the comprehensive plan that the city has going on, there's what's called a Parks Master Plan that's been worked on since last year. I was on that work group before I got elected. And what it's doing, it did a survey of all the existing parks. I looked at where the needs are, the demands are, how we can improve the conditions of the park, how we can fund the parks, how we can establish future parks. And the city paid the consultant for the big study. The good news is that it's being finished up, I believe, this month, and we have a draft of it that we're going to be considering at the next council meeting, talking about these parks. So it's a pretty big deal. What's going to be important is that, as council goes forward to vote on these parks being established, that you guys come to these meetings and say, hey, entire council, we want these parks to be established. Because again, I'm going to be introducing some park initiatives for our district, and I'm one person, I'm a strong advocate, but it's even better when you guys are there as well to speak about your opinion. Somebody, please, question.
So while we're all in favor of the parks as an alternative, the first thing I think is to, and I believe we're all on the same boat here, we're all in opposition of the current development that's being proposed to go in here.
Understood.
And so we've got to tackle that one first, get that taken care of, while the councilman continues his work on the park issue. But we need to get fighting on opposing the development.
Yes, and I don't want to take away from it. I'm using this opportunity to update people as we go. Again, that meeting is going to be on the 18th, the workshop, and on the 25th is the regular meeting where the public hearing will be held, where you can speak and we will vote.
Okay.
So a workshop, we can attend workshops.
You can attend workshops and meetings. Any meeting in the city hall is public. You can walk in, have a seat, and enjoy that meeting. Everyone's welcome, and it seems a lot of folks are just not aware of that. But I like to tell people you're able to come in. The agendas for the meetings are online on the website. You can watch previous meetings on the website. Every meeting, citizens have the opportunity to come in and speak to the council.
Do you have to request to be a speaker at those meetings?
I was going to get to that.
Yeah,
Yes.
sorry.
No, it's all right. When you walk into the chambers of the city hall, I think you'll be impressed, especially if you've never been in there for the first time. It's representative of what our city can be once you just see that inside. But anyways, when you walk in, there's a slip for citizens comment you will need to fill out. Your name, your address, I believe, and you'll give that to the secretary who's right there. And then when citizen comments portion of the meeting comes up, which is the first part of the meeting, you'll have 3 minutes to go speak to the council. You walk up to the thing, you get to talk to the council. Now, it has to be about something that's on the agenda for that meeting. If it's something random, you can't speak. The mayor's gonna say you can't. But if it's on that agenda, you get to come and you get to speak to the entire council. You have your city council watching you and listening to you. Okay? We don't have a lot of that. We don't, and we have not for a long time, unfortunately. But one thing that's important to me is citizen engagement, educating people on what the opportunities are, so that we can, make better decisions. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Somebody had a question. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I was going to say that one of my main things is deals with the property values,
Yes.
as well as the some of the safety, along with having townhouses here instead of regular single family homes at least. Because more people they tend to take care of their single family home a lot better than they would a townhouse, because a townhouse they're just renting.
Correct.
And so a lot of times they don't care, what happens to it, who comes over, violence, damage, anything like that. And having townhomes in the middle of a neighborhood, and the people that could possibly come in with that. And we're right here on Fort Hood. I mean, so there's constant turnover with soldiers deploying and everything like that, moving and PCSing. And so a lot of people move here in the city of Killeen just alone. Right. I mean, and having that rental space here in the middle of a established neighborhood, kind of brings everything down. And then I understand the fact of, wanting to send out a notice to those who are just, 400 feet away from the proposed build site, but this affects the entire neighborhood, not just those people who are 200 or 400 feet close to it. I mean, this affects everybody here.
Understood. I'm making notes of these things. Very good.
So please, if residents get these notices, put them on the Facebook page, please. That way the rest of us are aware.
Facebook page, send them to everybody in the neighborhood. I mean, something bigger than just, a few people, and, like you were saying, a day or two before the meeting, because that day or two before the meeting, that doesn't give anybody a chance to do anything.
Sure. Now again, and I respect exactly what you're saying. I have to find out exactly when those went out in the mail. That was a great question, so that we know, so we can better handle that. Go ahead, sir.
Oh, show of hands. How many people got the notice?
I got one the day after the meeting.
After the meeting, we didn't get it.
Okay.
I never got the
Mail
mail.
because of
Did
the
they say
holiday
anything
season.
about petition? Does that even matter? Should that be brought to the next meeting?
I'm glad that's a wonderful question. So, update on the petition. Thank you. Your petition is solid. You guys have reached the threshold for this thing to pass. It's going to require 6 of 7 council members to vote in favor, I'm sorry, for it to not pass, how do I put it? It's real simple. 6 of 7 council members have to vote for it to happen, for it to happen. Okay? I'm in opposition. I can't speak for all the other council members, but they understand how serious this is as well. And I believe they understand how serious this is. Make that correct for the press. And so when it comes time to vote, we'll make that vote. But I do want you to know that it can't just be 4 out of the majority of 4. It's going to require 7. That's a big deal. That's called a 3/4 majority requirement. So petition was successful. Right.
Okay, so you said like even if y'all don't know, they can always like bring it to you to do something else with it, like to do it again, like with more information.
So the applicant has the right, once, let's say this gets voted down, to come back to the city, not the council, and say, hey, look, we'd like to do these same townhomes, but in a planned unit development, which is another approach to it, which requires them to show a concept plan and satisfy all the issues that you guys have mentioned, and then it will go before them. So they have that opportunity. I won't know that unless the city accepts it, the city sends it to planning and zoning, then it comes up to council. That's the only way I'll see it.
Can we partition that as well?
I'm sorry?
Can we partition that as well?
You sure could.
Oh, okay.
That's your right. That's your right. Absolutely.
So if they do that, will it be more than just 200 and 400 feet out? Like, cause that doesn't affect, I mean like, it's great that we have a Facebook page,
Right.
but our entire neighborhood isn't on it. And so I wouldn't have known about it if somebody else wouldn't have seen it. And by the time I found out about it, it was already past all of your dates plus some other dates. It was almost 2022.
Right.
But if it comes out here and it goes bad, because all the fancy words you use, usually that means that you can bring some housing in. You want to make sure it's fair for everybody else. HUD and all those other people come in. There's lower income, and with lower income people, especially when they're migrating, it's violence and all of that raises. So that affects all of our households.
I get it.
Rather we're 200, 400 feet out. I understand that they get the right to do whatever they want to do, but I think that there should be something put in place that protects the neighborhood that has spent at a minimum $250,000 to $300,000 on these homes. Like, these are cheap homes. We're not talking about $125,000 homes. Not saying nothing wrong with them either, but like I can't just decide that you know what, that's too much for me and walk away from my house without taking a loss. I mean, right now I probably didn't take a loss. For 6 months from now I might.
I get you. And I just want to reiterate, there is a process in place to give you the opportunity to protest this. Again, some folks got the notices, some folks didn't because they're not within the boundary. I believe that's a state requirement, the 200 and 400 foot boundary. I have to go back and look at that to see if it can be adjusted, but that's the same process we've been using for years. I can't go tomorrow and change and say, hey, we want to make sure every 800 entire neighborhood. That takes a process. That's something I can look into. But again, there is a process in place for folks to protest this. Again, I advocated because no one showed up at 3 meetings. And I was able to get through, and I tabled it. You're welcome. Right. I tabled it so that we'd be able to have this conversation. So I appreciate that. I do appreciate your concern, very valid concern. So back to the protest or the petition. It is solid, and it's going to take 6 council members to vote it. But
One question.